What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there, and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this, and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled.
Okay, so you just saw that clip. And if that didn't get your attention, I don't know what will. What you just watched is a United States senator doing exactly what elected officials are supposed to do. Asking hard questions, demanding straight answers, and standing up for women and girls who feel like the system has left them behind. And that woman sitting there, Riley Gaines, a 5-time SEC champion and 2-time Olympic trials qualifier, she tied in that race. She tied. And they sent her home without a trophy. Let that sink in. I've got a lot to say about this because it goes way beyond swimming. It's about fairness. It's about whether we're still willing to have honest conversations or just dodge every uncomfortable question with political jargon. We're about to watch the full video and, trust me, it gets more eye-opening. But before we do, if you believe women's sports matter and that athletes like Riley deserve to be heard, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here. This is exactly the kind of conversation we have on this channel. All right, let's get into it.
Cruz? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Title IX was a landmark civil rights law. It helped create the incredible breadth of women's sports and girls' sports that we see across the country. I believe in girls' sports. I believe in women's sports. I'm the proud father of 2 daughters who are both athletes. I think participating in competitive sports is a wonderful thing for a young girl. I think it is a wonderful thing for a woman. And I think, unfortunately, today's Democrat Party has decided that women's sports and girls' sports no longer matters, and they're willing to push radical legislation designed to destroy girls' sports and women's sports. Ms. Gaines, I want to thank you for your courage. You are relatively young, but you have demonstrated incredible courage. And because you have dared to speak up, you have been demonized, you have been vilified. I saw when you were attacked by a leftist mob at San Francisco State University for daring to speak up. You had an incredible record as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky. You were a 2-time NCAA All-American. You were a 5-time SEC champion. You're an SEC record holder and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. But yet on March 27th, 2022, something changed. What happened on March 17th, 2022?
That's when Thomas and I raced in the 200 freestyle and again resulted in a tie.
And so you tied. What was the consequence of tying?
We went behind the awards podium where typically you're handed your trophy, you're marched out, you're named an All-American. And so we go back there, and the official looks at both Thomas and myself and says, "Great job, but you guys tied. And we only have one trophy, therefore we're giving this trophy to Leah." And I question this, and I say, why? And at first, I shortened it in my testimony, but really he stumbled on his words. He didn't know how to answer this. And at first he's, well, we're just doing this in chronological order. To which I further pressed, and I said, okay, well, what are you being chronological about? Because we tied. And if we're doing this off alphabetical order, G comes before T. So what are you being chronological about? To which this wasn't a script they had prepared for him. And he actually appreciated his honesty. He did say, we have to give the trophy for Leah because Leah has to have it for pictures. They've made that clear. Leah has to have the trophy for pictures. You can pose with this trophy, but you have to give yours back. You have to go home empty-handed. Leah Thomas takes the trophy home. End of story.
Now, let me ask you, as someone who's competed at the elite level, in your experience, is there a difference between women and men?
Of course. I think we learned this at a very young age, watching even 12 and unders play. Going through puberty causes irreversible advantage, that no matter the training, no matter the diet, no matter any alterable change you can make, will overcome that male advantage. Especially in sports like swimming, where lung capacity matters so much. Even something as silly as throat size, men have on average a 40% larger throat, which sounds like it's nothing, But when you're grasping for air, that 40% larger throat makes a huge difference in athletic success, not to mention height. You guys know the differences.
Ms. Robinson, do you agree with Ms. Gaines that there's a difference between women and men?
If the question is about trans women,
I'm just asking, is there a difference between women and men?
what I can say here is that the NCAA has rules in place. They've had rules in place for the last decade, and when this competition
Okay,
happened,
I'm going to try again.
the rules were clear.
Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? It's a yes/no question. Do you believe there's a difference?
Oh, I think that we're talking about this case with the NCAA.
No, I'm asking a question. Do you believe there's a difference between women and men? Most people could answer this very simply. I'm curious if you're willing to do so.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just putting it into the context of the
Is that a yes?
conversation that we're having. I think that there are definitions related to sex.
Is
but
that
I
a
also
yes?
think
So I'm
that when
trying to
we're-
get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech.
I'm
Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're
which
not
is
answering
different
that.
than
Let me ask
gender.
you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex
My
is different
question,
than gender.
why
and I do
do-
believe
why
that
do
women's sports have a
sports
great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right
Ms.
now.
Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
we've talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I
determine
would
that
like to enter into
related
the
to
record an
participation.
article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100 meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men. If the radical Democrat agenda to destroy girls' sports and women's sports succeeds, little girls will not have a chance to compete. So I ask unanimous consent that this article be entered into the record.
Without objection. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues,
We just watched that in full. Where do I even start? Ted Cruz. Say what you want about him politically, and I know people have strong opinions, but in that hearing room he was sharp, focused, and asking the questions that millions of people have wanted someone in power to ask out loud. He wasn't grandstanding. He laid out the facts, brought a real athlete with a real story, and held people accountable on the record. And Riley Gaines, I have so much respect for this woman. Think about the courage it takes to sit in front of a Senate committee and relive what happened to you on that podium. She didn't just tie in a race. She was told to her face that the trophy was going to someone else for photo purposes. Not because of performance. Not because of merit. For optics. That is wrong, and I don't think you need any particular political opinion to see that something deeply unfair happened to her that day. The moment that really got me, and I think this is the heart of the whole video, is when Cruz asked the simplest possible question. Is there a difference between women and men? Yes or no? And she could not answer it. She hid behind NCAA policy and talked about gender versus sex definitions. And Cruz pushed back and said, then why do women's sports exist at all? It's a completely logical question, and the fact that it couldn't be answered in a Senate hearing tells you a lot. Here's my honest take. Most people, whatever their politics, understand that male puberty creates physical changes that don't simply disappear. The Duke Law article Cruz entered into the record backs this up. The women's world record in the 100 meters was broken by over 2,000 men in a single year. That's not a political opinion, that's data. And when we talk about fairness in sport, that data has to be part of the conversation. I also want to say this clearly, because I know this topic gets heated fast. Talking about fairness in women's sports is not the same as being hateful toward anyone. We can treat every person with dignity and respect and still have an honest conversation about competitive fairness.
Cruz kept it there.
He made it about the integrity of women's sport and about an athlete who was robbed of a trophy she earned. What frustrated me most watching this was the evasion, because the evasion itself is an answer. When you cannot say in plain English that there is a biological difference between men and women, you've already told us where you stand. The women and girls who train every day and sacrifice everything for their sport deserve better than that. They deserve honesty. Cruz walked in with a purpose: to give Riley Gaines a platform, put facts on the record, and force a conversation that many in power would rather avoid. For that, I think he deserves credit. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you stand. If this gave you something to think about, share it around. Catch you in the next one.